Okay, we're live. So, Anthony, we're rushing through this today, but what was the idea for this chat?
Yeah, let's get right into it. So, pros and cons of different investment strategies. So, everything in life has its pros and cons, and real estate strategies are no different. Each strategy has a good thing about it. Each strategy has something that might not be such a good thing about it, depending on what your goals are.
That just sucks.
Yeah, that just sucks. Or compared to another strategy, doesn't compare as well. Like maybe it's higher cash flow, but it's more maintenance. And maybe you're looking for a complete turnkey hands-off investment. So we're just going to go through some of the most common investment strategies that members that work with us invest in or choose to use on these properties. And I'll get your opinion, a quick pro and a quick con for each strategy type.
Okay.
So
it's weird because a pro and con for each strategy type is also going to depend on that person's age, financial situation, financial goals. But in general, yeah, let's do it.
In general, yeah. So single family rentals.
So single family rentals, the pro is they are the easiest properties to find. So what I mean by that, they're the most liquid. They're always changing hands. That's the pro. Easiest to buy, easiest to sell, easiest to refinance. They're liquid. Banks consider them the most liquid piece of real estate in the country of Canada. The con can be that you're limited to the amount of revenue that you can pull from it, because unless it's set up for something you can convert into a duplex, you're going to rent it out to like one family and you're going to be tied to that amount of rent or that amount of revenue for the property. So that would be the con for single family homes.
Okay. So similar single family home, but rent to own.
Okay, the benefit of a rent-to-own strategy on a single-family home is it removes a lot of the headaches that come with renting properties, because the tenant in there is treating the property, usually, not always, but usually treating the property as something they're going to buy. So all the small repair issues that you usually deal with as a landlord tend to, and this is not guaranteed, but tend to drift away, because the tenant is going to want to paint the house because they're planning to buy it. The tenant is going to want to fix maybe a leaky faucet or something because they're planning to buy that house. Mm-hmm. And you can often make agreements with tenants around that they handle the small repairs that you couldn't enforce at the tenant board, but you can have that relationship in a rent to own where they're like taking a more ownership role during the rental period of the rent to own agreement. So that's kind of like the positive. It's really great. And you can charge slightly higher than average rent on it. Oh, that's two things. Anyway.
And collect the upfront option fee.
Yeah. I think that's 3 things now.
Yeah, there's a lot. Yeah. There's a lot.
The con, so the con on a rent to own would be that if the market moves aggressively in the positive, that if you've agreed to sell the property 3 years after the tenant moves in, you typically decide a buyout price on the day they're moving in. Mm-hmm. So if we get a lot of appreciation like we have, you can leave money sitting on the table because maybe you appreciate the property at what you think is an aggressive price at like 6.5% a year. Mm-hmm. And then if the market appreciates at like 7, 10, or 20% a year, when they buy the property, they're going to have a lot of equity built in because, the property's appreciated a lot more than your buyout price.
Yeah.
So that can be a con.
Yeah. But if the market weren't to do that and the house were to be worth less than what the market price is, then you come out ahead in that arrangement.
You come out ahead because...
Like if the market moves the opposite way.
Yeah, got it.
Yeah. And you set a higher buyout price.
Yeah, like if the buyout price was $700,000 and the market says the comparables are showing that house is worth only $600,000.
Yeah.
You come out ahead, but the negative is you have somebody there that's trying to buy the house and they're not going to be able to get bank financing really easily or an appraisal really easily at $700,000 if the market's $600,000.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you come out at, I don't know if you come out ahead because they have to be able to buy the property from you. Mm. And that's
so then the rent home just might not work.
Well, you might have to extend it a little bit.
Got it.
You might have to extend it a year or 2 to let the market catch up with the price that you're trying to sell it for.
Yeah.
So we've had that situation a few times over the last 14 years, and it tends to work out. So, it can be a little tricky.
Okay. Student rentals, pro.
Student rental, the pro is just the cash flow. Typically, if you buy it right, if you're not buying like a condo with only 3 bedrooms or 2 bedrooms, or you're not buying a smaller house, if you can get like 6 or 7 rooms properly and legally in the house, it's the cash flow. We had a friend that had a 9-bedroom legal student rental outside McMaster. The cash flow on that thing was just disgusting. So actually one of my student rentals at York that we've since sold, the cash flow at one point was $1,800 a month. And this was like 14 years ago.
Yeah.
$1,800 a month. So it's cash flow on student rentals for sure.
Okay. And the con?
The con is, it's going to sound bad, but I was going to say students. My son's a student right now, so that maybe sounds bad. You're dealing with students, but no.
Specific demographic.
No, it's not. Because if you treat students with respect, they treat the house with respect. That's what we've found. So that's not the con. I'll take that back. I'll say a lot of student rentals are older homes, because some of the student rentals around McMaster or Mohawk College or Queens or Western or even Laurier, some of the houses are older. So the con is the cash flow's high, but you have to know what you're buying. Otherwise, you're going to have to be dealing with foundation issues or roof issues. So it's typically older houses in those communities that are turning into student rentals, and they could have a lot of maintenance. So you could have some upfront costs in the early life cycle ownership of that home, the first 3 years, kind of fixing it up and getting it to the standard that you need it to be.
And then what about the students in terms of extra maintenance, just because they might not know how to run a home the same way an adult would?
Yeah, but it's minimal. Like, for example, like some of the students might not know how to change a furnace filter, but that's fine. You can kind of teach them how to change a furnace filter.
Over the phone,
Yeah, and sometimes some of the issues they don't understand. So, for example, if there's like a couple of examples we've had are electricity has gone out before and they didn't know that it was just a breaker.
Yeah.
And when we asked them to go to the panel to just flip the breaker back on, they said they were all on. So I had to drive to that house on like late, I'll never forget, on a Saturday night. I get there and the breaker, sometimes breakers look like they're on, but it's not all the way. So you have to kind of switch it all the way left and then switch it all the way right to make sure it's like totally on. And that's all it was, and the power was on. But the message we got is like the power's off in half the house and there's an electrical problem, right?
Yeah.
It was just a breaker. I think they had plugged in a dryer into a same outlet where they had other things going, and it kind of blew it.
I think the good thing about all the cash flow that you can get is that you can easily use that cash flow to hire a property manager to kind of deal with some of that stuff.
And I think for student rentals, it's, unless you have the time, like you're going to get into the student rental game here, and you're going to manage them yourself, which I would totally advise.
Yeah.
But if you're a busy family with kids and working downtown Toronto, but your house is at Queens, you definitely want a property manager.
For sure. Condos, rentals, just buying a condo already built.
The pro?
Yeah.
They're new, so you don't have a lot of maintenance. And because it's a condo, you don't have a lot of maintenance, right? If something goes wrong in the condo, it's usually the condo board's going to have some way to be addressing that issue. So the maintenance requests in general on condos are less than other types of properties.
Okay. The con?
The con is that it's such a cookie cutter property. It's difficult to sell it in times when you really might want to. So for example, when COVID broke out, we had a lot of vacancies in downtown Toronto. And we saw some buildings, not all of them, but some buildings with a lot of listings of condos for sale. I think people were running them as Airbnbs and then they couldn't, so they wanted to offload them. Well, it's hard to distinguish yourself from a corner unit on floor 12 from a corner unit on floor 11 that's selling for a little bit less because it's lower. How do you make someone buy yours one floor up in a 20-story building?
So your product is just too similar to other
It's a little too generic. It's hard to differentiate it in a condo if you need to sell it in times of need. So that's kind of like a worst case scenario position. So maybe it's not important to people, but it's definitely something to be aware of. Whereas a house, there's always something you can do to it. Yeah. You can, make the landscaping awesome. You can change inside, and that usually the house next door isn't exactly the same as your house. You can do stuff to
it's
the
got
backyard.
More character for sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Second suite conversion. So buying a house like a single family rental and then adding in like a basement apartment.
Okay, so the pro to that is definitely the cash flow. Just as by way of example, in Hamilton, houses that we would rent out that have now been turned into second suites, when we used them as just a single family home, it wasn't that long ago we were renting them out for like $1,650. This is like 10 years ago. And now you can legally make a second suite, so it's almost like a duplex, and you can rent out the top for $2,400 and the bottom for like $2,000. Yeah. So you're getting $4,400. So the house that used to generate $1,500, the same house that you maybe had to rework a little bit to make it a legal second suite, is now generating $4,400 in revenue. So the cash flow on those things is definitely the pro.
Plus forced depreciation from doing that renovation.
Absolutely. Yeah.
The con?
The con is it takes money to set that up properly. Yeah. So if you can't find a house that's legally set up as a second suite, you're going to have to spend money. And most contractors, when they walk into those homes, they just want to gut the whole basement and start it from scratch. So it's going to cost you anywhere from like $80 to like $160 to do that basement properly. Whereas if you kind of know what you're doing, sometimes you can buy a house and only put $10,000, $15,000 and convert it into a legal second suite. But most contractors who walk in the door don't talk that game. They're like, hey, we have to just like gut the whole thing.
So what's your advice then? If somebody wants to do conversion, they get a contractor and they're like, hey, it's 120 grand gut. What's your advice? Is it like, who would you get in to maybe see if you can do it for a little bit less?
You just want to find another owner of that type of property in the area, so another investor, and ask them how they legalized it. Because if it was just adding a fire door between the two units, changing the height of the basement in one area and not the whole thing, maybe moving a wall.
So it's just knowing the specific requirements.
That's a better way to answer it. Yeah.
Okay.
Knowing the specific requirements, and the town sometimes can be helpful to that. So I guess maybe talking to somebody who does design work to make these legal second suites and say, hey, listen, can you tell me what the least amount I can do to make this a legal second suite? Is it possible? And sometimes it is.
Yeah. Okay. Multi-units. So like duplexes, triplexes, or even bigger. So maybe like a 4-plex, 5-plex.
So the pro on that is that you have no single point of failure on income. You know, if you have a 6-plex or something like that, and when you have one vacancy, you still have 5 other people who are paying you. Yeah. So with rent and vacancy so low, I'm not even sure that's a great pro anymore. But that's definitely, that is, I guess, a pro of multi.
You're right. There is so much demand in our specific area. My thought to that, whenever I've heard that, like, yeah, sure, you have all the other ones, but what if everyone goes at once?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Then you have a lot to cover.
Then
for
you have
sure.
a lot to cover, way more than you would with like a single family.
Yeah. Someone renovates a building across the street and everybody kind of darts over there.
Yeah. That's always been my thing. I'm like, sure, one
really
person.
Happen. Usually that doesn't happen.
It's worst case scenario.
Yeah.
And especially in our area, we're not too worried about vacancies.
Yeah. Right? Some other people will say a pro is economies of scale. You know, you have maybe one heating unit, one air conditioning unit for a larger multi-unit building that's they're supplying 6. I'm not a huge fan of multi-units. I guess the biggest pro would be if you can get a multi-unit that needs work and has a couple of vacancies, then you can get in there and fix it up and then re-rent them at a much higher rent. Now the pro is that you're buying something at a lower price and you're, through your own sweat equity and work, increasing the value of that property and making it much more valuable. Mm-hmm. And then as the other tenants leave over time, you can do that to all the units and really produce a nice building at the end. That would be the biggest pro, I guess.
Okay. And the con?
The con for these, to me, is that it can be difficult to increase the value of these properties because sometimes you have some tenants who are going to stay there for 20 years. So you can't increase the rent because they're going to live there and they don't want you to renovate. And it can be a hassle to get 2 or 3 people out of a 6-unit building to agree to leave because you're going to renovate the building. And there are ways to do it legally and properly to get them to leave, but it can be a hassle dealing with all these tenants on one building. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a personal thing. It's not my preference for the type of investment. Yeah.
Okay. Before I move to the next one, what is your preference then? Like the Tom Karadza, and it varies for everyone.
Yeah, to me, it's single family homes that you can either rent them out. You know, we have one that we've owned for quite some time that used to be a duplex, but because over time the mortgage has gotten paid down and the value has gone up, we can rent it out as a single family and it still works for us.
Like it still cash flows.
Yeah, it still cash flows less than if we duplexed it, but the financial situation of my own life right now, it doesn't really matter. Mm-hmm. So, and if I want to sell that property, I can sell it tomorrow. If I want to refinance it, I can refinance it tomorrow. So single family, either operating as a single family rental or a duplex that you've converted properly, those are, my favorites. They're just so liquid. Mm-hmm. You could sell them easy. You can refinance them easily. All the banks deal with them.
They're simple.
It's just a nice piece of real estate. If you look at some of the biggest hedge funds in the US right now, one of the things they're listing, along with like insurance plans and some of the private lending they do and like pharma that they invest in, you'll see on some of the best hedge funds will have single family rentals as one of the asset classes that they're investing in. Why? It's for all the reasons I just said. They're easy to manage, they're liquid, refinance them, sell them, buy them. Yeah. It's just a nice property. If you look at the Canada's pension plan. Canada's pension plan just said they're going to put $845 billion into single-family homes in the U.S. So Canada's pension plan is going to buy $845 billion worth of single family homes. Why are
Wow.
they choosing single family homes? It's for all the same reasons.
Yeah.
They can get in, they can get out, the rent is good. Also, another positive of single family homes is they tend to appreciate not with the rent. Multi-units, you have to increase the rent to really get the value of the property rising with you. Single family homes, if the residential real estate market's on fire like it has been, they increase in value even if the rent stayed the same. The value of the property isn't tied to the income. Multi-units, it typically is. So that's kind of it's kind of a blessing and a curse, because if the market comes down, it doesn't matter what the income is. Usually your residential real estate property will come down. But when we're in an environment where dollars in Canada and the US are being printed like crazy and need to be printed like crazy because of the debt that we have, the chances are that these things are likely going to go up in dollar terms. So yeah, they're interesting investments.
Yeah. I've never thought about how the rent doesn't impact the value.
Yeah, not on residential income properties.
Yeah.
You know, like maybe to you, because you're an investor, you're like, oh, look at the rent they're getting here. But usually, even if it's operating as a duplex, usually the property's tied somewhat to the prices of residential real estate in the area.
Yeah.
Whereas a multi-unit is very like cap rate driven. What are the income? What are the expenses?
Yeah.
What's the return on my money in this thing? What's the capitalization rate? It's good or it's bad.
Yeah, it's very income driven.
Yeah. Whereas the residential isn't.
Okay. Pre-construction opportunities. So it could be townhomes, condos, basically just buying in on the ground floor. And
so the pro of that would be you can buy it early, and before it's built, you can get a lot of appreciation if things go your way. That's the pro. You know, when Nick and I are buying something north of Toronto and it's appreciated, it's a pre-construction vacation kind of property, and it's appreciated a lot. We haven't even closed on it yet. So that's the upside of pre-construction anything. That by the time you close, it's worth a lot more than when you bought it.
And the con?
The con is that your money is tied up to the builder for potentially 2 years. Could be as little as 6 months or 2 years, and the market can change on you. So if you give the builder $100,000 as the deposit on this property and the market goes sideways or down, you don't have access to that $100,000. You're kind of locked into that thing, and maybe the builder's not going to proceed, which we've seen a few cases of. So you're locking up your money into something that you don't know the value of it at the time you accept delivery. And that's kind of like, to me, that's why I like resale, because I'm putting my money into the market. I immediately know what I can rent the property for. I immediately know what the property is going for. But on pre-construction, it's like you're giving somebody money and you're kind of crossing your fingers. And many people have been right for like 10 years on that, because property prices in general, 2017 was a bit of a little wave there, but in general, they've kind of gone up. So many people are like, are you crazy? Pre-construction is the way to go. And I'm always like haunted by like the 1990 period where I'm like, real estate can crash. And then your money's tied up with a builder, and how hard is it going to be to get it back?
So it's the lack of control, and it's the speculation on the market continuing to go up.
Yeah, better way to say it. Lack of control, and you're ultimately speculating.
Okay. So what about an Airbnb property? So this could be on a condo, single family, whatever.
Yeah, just the cash flow. Like friends of mine who are doing Airbnbs, and some rockstar investors that we work with, they're just killing it on Airbnbs, especially like vacation Airbnbs, or even some downtown Toronto and some of the entertainment districts.
Or even in like Welland.
And Welland, yeah, you're right. In Welland, they're just killing it. They're just killing it on cash flow. So the upside is absolutely the income you can generate with an Airbnb.
Yeah. And the con?
The con is just the management, because it's usually shorter term. So if you have somebody turning over every 2 weeks or every weekend, maybe it's every month, but it's just the management of that's a lot of hassle.
Yeah, you're running like a mini hotel.
You're in the hospitality business.
Yeah, little shampoo bottles.
Yeah, your towels.
Catering.
Get them right.
You might be lining up activities for people.
You have to watch the reviews on your property.
Yeah, getting the cleaning the towels, the sheets.
Yeah, you're a mini hotel business.
Yeah. It's almost a different business, eh?
Yeah, it's more on the hospitality side.
And lastly, apartment buildings. So ranging from small, I don't know what you would consider small, like a 12-plex.
Sure, yeah.
To like, I don't know, 24, 30.
Yeah, 100, yeah.
100.
The pro on that is when you get to bigger apartment buildings, I was going to say the financing's good because you can qualify, the building can qualify for itself based on the income it generates. But having gone down that path, in all the lenders across Canada, unless you have an incredible net worth, you are still personally guaranteeing, and you have to show a certain amount of liquid net worth to qualify for that. So it's a bit of a myth that, from my experience anyway, that you can a big building, you don't have to personally qualify. because the building will qualify on all the income. So that's not quite the best pro. I guess just the sheer absolute dollar terms that you're generating every month is the pro. Like you're collecting a lot of rent at 12 to 100 units. You're controlling a lot of income. And I guess that's the biggest pro.
Okay. And the con?
The con is that they're complicated to run, right? Like if you have a big building, you might have elevators, you might have parking garages. So now the maintenance requests are beyond, a simple, the driveway sinking a little bit. Can you get that fixed? To the parking garage wall is collapsing. We were looking at a building, Nick and I, in Hamilton, and that's exactly what was happening. Like the whole parking garage wall was collapsing in.
Wow.
So you're just dealing with a different level of problem. You just have to have a little bit deeper pockets to manage everything that can go wrong. But it's just the same as owning any income property. You just have to have deeper pockets to handle it. That's all. And that can be a con, right? Because not everybody has those deeper pockets, especially when you're starting out, to handle big maintenance requests.
And the time too, right?
You're right.
More
the time.
Units.
You're
more stuff to deal with.
Like when we were looking at a property, a multi-unit in St. Clair, on St. Clair, downtown Toronto, we realized that like some of the income we were going to have to give up because we didn't have the time to go and take the garbage out. Because it was on those big kind of wheeled things that you had to kind of pull out a little bit for the garbage guys. And so there was a super of the building, but that super paid a lot less rent because, he or she was sweeping the hallways, making sure the garbage, just little things. But now the rent that we had calculated at one level, we're like, oh, we kind of have to give that back just for simple stuff because we don't have the time to get that managed. And it wasn't even the property manager that was taking that money. It was just somebody in there who was acting as the super that was getting a discount for some of the things they were doing. Because we didn't have the time to do them ourselves, right? So yeah, for sure.
Okay, that's it. That's all the basics. I don't know if apartment buildings are considered a basic.
Yeah.
That's the full gamut.
This is a great idea to do this. I feel like we rushed through it, so that's apologies on me. So I feel
you can go into way more for each
so
one,
much.
but this is just a hard hitting, quick pro, quick con kind of video.
Thanks, Anthony.
No problem.